Hey, so let's talk about ggplot. ggplot is an R package. It's now part of the Tidyverse, and it's made for making graphs. I'm on the ggplot homepage, and if you scroll down, you'll see a simple graph right away. I think it's interesting. Like, I kind of think of the work of being a data scientist or working with data as you got a bunch of numbers. It's kind of this crazy thing, and then what you need to do is you need to turn that into a narrative. You need to figure out what's going on from all of those numbers into something that's actionable in the world. And making graphs is one of, if not the most powerful ways to do that. And there's these language wars of Python versus R versus you could list whatever else, Stata, Julia, what have you. And people will debate that. That's kind of a boring and tired debate. But I will say, ggplot is, I think, regarded or thought of as the best graphical software, at least open source, that there is. You can make absolutely gorgeous plots that could be in here's examples from the mock blog in BBC quality. Maybe these were actually in BBC. So you can. What's really cool about ggplot is with layers of logic in this framework, you can make really quick and simple plots, and you can make all the way up to production level plots. So it's an unbelievable tool to have in your arsenal. And what I want to do is I want to in this video walk through the basics of ggplot. So ggplot, a lot of people will say, "Hey, I don't need to remember. I don't need to memorize specific commands because I can always just look up the command for how to change the color of something." And that's 100% true. You don't need to memorize specific commands. But what is extremely valuable is to learn the framework, learn the basics of like how does ggplot think about creating a plot, and what are the layers, and what is the basic syntax, so that kind of flows off your fingers and you feel like you can rapidly iterate across making plots to understand data, as opposed to it can be a really big obstacle if every time you want to do something you have to go spend 3 minutes looking it up. Data science is all about iterating quickly to get from your current state of no knowledge, no insight, to a state of, oh, that's interesting, oh, I should share that, oh, we should change this action. And the faster you can do that, so having some basics understood and mastered, or even memorized a little syntax in some cases, can be really valuable. So here's the ggplot homepage. It's a good starting point. ggplot's made by Hadley Wickham. I think this was the original Tidyverse package that he made as part of his PhD at the great Iowa State. You can scroll through. You can see here there's some getting help and whatever. I pulled this mock-up blog just to show you an example. We won't get all the way to this point, but just to show you an example of how beautiful it's motivating to see how beautiful ggplots can be. And then I'll add in the description to this video. R for data science, for my money, it's free. So for my money, it's kind of said tongue in cheek, is a great way to like walk through. Like if you spent a couple of hours walking through this chapter and really trying to digest it, you'd get very far. And I'm going to cover basically the basics of what this chapter covers, but I'll link in the description. And then also I'd be remiss without noting that there's a full-on ggplot book. I think probably best used as a reference as opposed to reading it like a full-on novel, but it's good to know that there is. And then lastly, I'll note that there's this R-graph gallery, which can be useful just to click through and just continue to get a sense of what's possible. But anyways, let's get into ggplot. What I've pulled up here is here's the data set that we're going to work with. It's a simplified version of MT cars. So basically we've got 4 columns here. One, it's just the name of the car. Second is the miles per gallon. Another is the weight in thousands of pounds, and then the number of cylinders. I think even here, like, to make my point clear of like data analysis or data science is about going from raw data to insight, it's kind of clear here. Like maybe you've got your hands on this data. There's probably some story to be told here about cars, relationships, and weights, association with miles per gallon and different types of cars. But it's not at all obvious from just looking at this sheet. Maybe you could pick it apart and notice, hey, 21, when this goes up, this goes down or whatever. But this is exactly what graphs are great for, and what ggplot's a great tool to build graphs to figure it out. So let's switch into R. ggplot is part of the Tidyverse, so we can load that. And then I've set it up simply just so that you can do read CSV and then bit.ly simple dash data slash cars. We'll read it in. If I run that, I read in the data. Now, of course, I didn't save it to anything. So let's actually save it to the variable cars. And if I do cars and then pipe in view, we can actually see this is just the same data set and just reiterating that I read it into R. Okay, so let's make a plot, shall we? So start with cars. ggplot syntax will always start with what you're going to visualize as a data frame. Like you're going to visualize something about this data frame. We're starting with the name of the data frame. And then the syntax I like is we're going to use the pipe to pipe it into the basic ggplot function. And the thing that you'll get used to writing all of the time is AES, which stands for aesthetic, basically sets the foundation of the graph. And what you're usually going to do is say, hey, first, aesthetics are something that you map to the graph. X equals, and we're going to choose our X variable. Like we're going to put some variable on the X axis. Let's say at first we're interested in figuring out, hey, do cars that weigh more have a lower miles per gallon, a worse gas efficiency? So the way I think about that is, all right, let's put weight on the X axis. Let's put miles per gallon on the Y axis. And now I've just sort of instantiated a graph. If I run this, you get, like, let's pull this up just so we can see it. You get the foundation of a graph. I've said, hey, weight is going to go on the x-axis. Hey, miles per gallon is going to go on the y-axis. R has started to look at, or ggplot has started to look at the range of my data and say, hey, the data fits between 10 and 35 on this axis, between 2 and 5 on this axis. But notice there's sort of nothing here. That's kind of a bummer. So I just created the foundational layer. Now what I need to do is to add on I need to plot something. And so one of the most common things you'll add is just point, which basically says, all right, take this plot and then let's literally make a point, a scatter plot for each of the values. Cool. So each of these is one of the cars. Now I can see very clearly that the relationship is negative, as expected. Heavier cars get worse miles per gallon. And then I always start by making something like basic like this and then iterating on top of this. So like, let's talk about how we can iterate. Maybe first thing you notice is, hey, there is that cylinders variable. It'd be kind of nice to put the cylinders variable on. So let's add that as a color. It's another aesthetic. It's a mapping to it. You notice, oh, weird. That's a continuous color. Like what? Why is it this continuous scale? It's because cylinder's this number. So let me do as factor, and that'll actually make it a different color for each. Okay, that's cool. So now you start to look at this. Cars with 4 cylinders are lighter weight, and they all kind of follow the same relationship. Maybe you say, okay, I actually want to draw a line to show this. Geom smooth can be really helpful for that. This will draw a smoothing line. You say, okay, it's giving me some standard errors. Let's go SE equals false. Let's remove those standard errors. Maybe it's like curving a lot. Maybe method equals LM so that we're fitting lines and then we can see the lines. Maybe it's kind of nicer if they're transparent, like this is too big of a line, too fat of a line in my view, or like it's too, it dominates the graph too much. Oh, I thought we could do alpha there. Okay, I don't think we can do alpha on that right away, but we can change the size. So let's just change. the size. Maybe we like those really faint or really light lines. Something some people might tell you is, well, shouldn't these axes really start at 0? Like it can be a little funky to think through. So let's just add 0. And then I don't want to specify the maximum. Let me just let the maximum be inferred from the data. So let's do x equals NA. Maybe you like that better. We can do the same thing to the y-axis. Now I've got this actual, you could sort of keep messing and keep iterating. Labs equals weight of the car, y equals miles per gallon. So now I'm actually, maybe I don't know what else. Title equals heavier cars get worse gas mileage. Or get worse, have worse fuel efficiency. That sounds nicer, doesn't it? And now I've got a plot. I mean, this was quick, but now I've got a plot. So that just gives you a sense of how you can iterate on top of it. Again, you don't have to memorize each of these pieces, but it is useful to understand the basic syntax. And then by going over it over and over again, you'll start to memorize. The pieces, like the things to really know is you start with a data frame that you're going to graph. You set up the initial mappings of, and you do that with this aesthetic function inside of the ggplot, where I'm going to say, hey, take the variable weight and put it on the x-axis. Take the variable mpg, put it on the y-axis. Take the variable cylinders, put it in, map it to color. Okay, so now I've sort of set up the foundations of my plot. Then I'm saying, all right, well, what am I going to graph here? Well, we're going to graph points. So let's add geom point. Then I say, well, I actually do kind of want to see the relationship smoothed over. I want to see the general trend. So let me add a geom smooth. So this kind of makes the plot. And then I think of this as, all right, let's change the dimensions. Let's change the x-axis. Let's change the y-axis. Those are the limits. NA lets the maximum be inferred. And then lastly is the labels. Let's clean up the labels. Let's have an intelligent x-axis. Let's have an intelligent y-axis. Let's have a title that sort of marks the very high level. You can iterate. You just keep iterating. Let's do one more just to see. So say, all right, that's a nice graph. Maybe that tells some part of the story, but maybe there's some other part of it. Maybe let's try viewing it in one additional way. So cars, ggplot, aesthetic. Now I got to kind of pause and think, what do I want to, well, there's not that many points here. I wonder if we can actually get the car on the plot. Like I want to be able to see that this is a Pontiac Firebird in somewhere. So let's try that. And then maybe I'm only interested in miles per gallon right now. I'm really just want to know, hey, what's the miles per gallon of each of these cars? Can I see it all in one? So let's say the x-axis is, I said I wanted to get the name of the car on there. So let's say x-axis is actually car. Let's say y-axis is miles per gallon. And then, again, I just want to like iterate. I just want to get something on there. So let's just try making a point with this. Okay. This happens all the time. This is kind of fun. Like we've graphed the miles per gallon, but the car names are just absolutely writing all over each other. One trick that can be helpful, you could rotate the label on the x-axis. So it's like a vertical text. The thing I like to do is let's just flop the X and the Y. Okay, not bad. Let's change the theme. So there's these themes, and then you see how it's kind of writing over. I guess I could, let me make it a little bigger, but I can also change base size to 10. Let's just see. Black white gives it this white background. Base size 10. Fits a little bit better. Maybe I'd make it slightly smaller, but it's not bad for now. The other thing I'm noticing is, okay, the order of these is alphabetical, which is kind of okay, but it makes for this extraordinarily messy graph of like the points are everywhere. So something that can be unbelievably useful, an unbelievably high leverage thing is to change the order of this variable. I like to do this with mutate because it makes it very clear what's happening. So let's make a new variable car ordered equals, and then there's these factor reorder says, okay, I'm going to treat car as a factor and car is the variable. And then now I'm going to give it, what do I want to order it based on? Well, I want to order it based on miles per gallon. So let's actually do miles per gallon. And then now, so this little block created a new variable. I probably should just put it on one line and then let's use the car ordered variable instead. Cool. Doesn't that just feels nicer, doesn't it? Then you might say, well, a dot is a dot the right thing here? I kind of have to follow this line to read it. Maybe it'd actually be nice if this was a bar. So let's change this from being a point to being a call for a column. Okay, I kind of like that. I see Toyota Corolla's got the best miles per gallon. Cadillac Firebird has the lowest. There's always a trade-off of do I want to add more information? Kind of tempted to add that the cylinder. I don't know. I just like the one. It's kind of fun when when there's some color on the graph, and then maybe the color is maybe someone is interested. Maybe it's some way to view sort of similar types cars or something. So let's just add the color so that now the bars are going to change color. And this happens all the time. Color, that's kind of weird. I'm getting that outline. If you look it up, or it's actually fill chooses the inside of the bar. So this makes very clear that it's the 4 cylinders that are getting the best miles per gallon. I can actually see them by name. It's then the 6 cylinders that are getting the second, and then the 8 cylinders. It kind of makes the relationship very, very, very clear. Add labels. X equals miles per gallon. Let's give the MPG is and then Y equals. I just kind of wonder, people do say you want to label your axes. You really need to put name of car. I could type name of car here. Kind of seems to me that this is fairly clear. So if you do null, it'll actually take out that label and it'll give the room to the plot. So let's try that. Again, I change things and then make the plot. Okay, not bad. I also don't know. This kind of bothered, as factor cylinder. I guess I could change that, but let's just do guides. This controls the legend. Fill equals, I think it's none. Kind of guessing here, but I think that removes it. Then you might wonder, well, okay. Well, now I've totally lost the information. So you could play around with it. So maybe I actually do want that, but maybe I want fill equals cylinders to relabel it. You could play around with putting it on top or putting it on bottom, but that doesn't look too bad. And then now let's do a title equals cars by fuel efficiency. Probably a better title we could come up with. I find grabbing someone and explaining the plot to them can be a useful way. The other thing I'll note that's extremely useful is, subtitles really nice. 4-cylinder cars have best MPG. And I'm just getting the habit of changing one thing, making the plot. How does that feel? You could change the size. I kind of think the size of that subtitle is too close to the size of the title. So I might go Google, hey, how do you change that? Or can I change? But caption is really useful. I like because what I'm going to do is probably copy and paste this graph to a presentation or an email or a document or whatever. I like when the graph has all of the information I could possibly need. Caption is a really useful way to throw a bunch of new information in. Data from MPG and R showing power of ggplot. If I do that, I get this caption in the bottom. Again, you might care about the format. Maybe I want /n will give me, it'll put it on a new line. Maybe I actually kind of want it from bullet points. There's this cool hack where if you do Alt, or is it Option 8, you'll get bullets. So maybe you like the bullet view, but you can keep iterating. Maybe I need to change the dimensions now because I'm adding titles. I'm constricting the size, so now this is overlapping itself. Maybe you think this grid's actually not adding much. Like, I really think about building a graph is all about adding elements that help to tell the story, and then removing elements that are unnecessary to the story. People will talk about the white space. You want just the essence. You want just the essence of what you're trying to tell, and really highlight that in a graph if you're going for a final graph like this. But that's the basics of ggplot. Kind of shows my workflow of how I iterate. And like I say, I think it's useful to know this basic flow of take a data frame, create a basic ggplot by choosing the aesthetics, and then adding elements to it. ggplot very much thinks in terms of layers. Of you start by building the foundation, then you would add a layer of a point, then you add another layer of a smoother. You can change the order in which the layers happen by changing the order of the operations in your code. The one thing that throws people off is we use this pipe to give the data frame cars to this ggplot function, but then for sort of historical reasons, ggplot always uses the plus operator. I actually don't mind that. I think of that as adding a layer. I have a graph. I'm going to add a layer. I'm going to add a layer. I'm going to add a layer. And then you think of this graph as just being this kind of multi-dimensional layered view that's flattened onto the piece of, onto the computer or the piece of paper because you just have 2 dimensions. But you can think of the plus as adding one more of these layers, and then we view it from the bird's eye view. So that's ggplot. I highly recommend diving around, learning more, but incredibly powerful tool for understanding data, all the way from just getting to know the data when you first get your hands on it of what's going on here, start to graph it. Like, what's the data look like? And then at the end, actually, when you're putting together your presentation or you're sending or putting together a write-up or something, you make a graph. So in that way, graphing is at the very beginning of a data workflow and at the very end, which makes it especially powerful and especially awesome that ggplot's such a great tool, such a great mature tool for creating graphs. Okay, we'll leave it there for today.